Hello and welcome to the first session of Karen's Colours for 2026. This is going to be one of those monthly colour forecasts, but before embarking on a reading for January 2026, I'd like to remind us all that this is a traditional time to review the past year before setting out our goals and resolutions for the upcoming year. If you've already done those resolutions, then maybe you might like to consider them in the light of what I present today. We're going to be examining the progress made, the setbacks encountered, the challenges that we've overcome, and the work that has been left undone. But before we begin, thank you once again for attending this session. I know that there are not many of you that do so, but I'm certainly hoping that those of you who do will get something positive out of these readings. The reading itself is going to be rather truncated because I'll spend most of the time looking at 2025 in review. We're going to be examining the colours of the main skills and experiences that you've had, the colours of the primary blockages or deficits that have afflicted you throughout the year. And the review will encourage you to think where you're going to go next. There'll be creation of New Year's resolutions that are involved, but those, of course, are very personal to you. And of course, because we make New Year's resolutions, there are lots of goals to be set, lots of ideas about where we want to go next. There is an importance in reviewing past experience so that we can create a future path. And that future path will be denoted by one colour card for January 26. And I'm going to also give you an oracle card to help guide the way. But otherwise, the reading will be extremely truncated. Certainly, enjoy. So now we're into the colour readings that have occurred throughout 2025 for people born in the month of March. Let's see what your year had in review. Well, February began with a lot of harmony, organisation, and a fair degree of freedom, as denoted by the preponderance of cyan, blue, and green. By March, the harmony and organisation had somewhat disappeared, and instead, the colour that was predominant was green. There were new beginnings and lots of choices available to you. By April, those choices had dissipated, probably because you'd made some, and now there was struggle and disruption and withdrawal that was taking place. You needed the confidence to allow things to change, but at the same time, not to declare them openly. Black is always about secrecy. Purple and orange are about dealing with crisis and calamity of whatever variety they may have been. By May, there was a lot of opportunity, although that disruption continued. So here we had green and purple being the two most prominent colours. By June, you were all over the place. There were issues coming from everywhere, lots of different colours and nothing in particular that stood out. By July, that had created a fair degree of mental overload, which is denoted by the yellow, and quite a bit of confusion, trying to find a middle road. And that's denoted by the exceptionally large amount of grey that appeared. By August, you'd reverted to cyan and white. There was stagnation, but there was also shock. Whatever it is that you had made choices about earlier in the year had now got you to the state where reality hit and you were at a standstill. That standstill continued through into September, where once again you had to realign yourself. Purple became another one of those prominent colours. You needed to be able to create something out of whatever it was that had fallen apart during the previous couple of months. By October, you'd virtually given up. There was a great deal of compassion in the things that you were planning to do, the things that you were capable of, but there was also vulnerability, and that was denoted by the preponderance of pink. The red, on the other hand, said that you were also pretty much jumping out of your skin. There was a lot of activity that had to be dealt with. By November, it was all about survival and confidence to be able to overcome the vulnerability that you felt as a result of the things that you had had to deal with throughout the previous month. And in December, there was a great deal of mental overload. Once again, you had to think about what you were doing because that crisis, that survival instinct that had happened, caused you so much trauma in November, had now become something that you needed to deal with, because now you needed to have the courage, the confidence to go out and face the world and deal with issues that arose from there. Now, of course, that could also mean that you were having a jolly good time, enjoying yourself and socializing, because yellow and orange together often do create that. But looking at the previous colors, where there was a lot of pink, a lot of purple, it tends to suggest that these social occasions weren't necessarily building up from something that you specifically wanted to inspire. So where did it lead you in the end of the year? Well, the two colors that appeared most frequently throughout the year were orange and purple. Orange is all about crisis and courage and sociability. Were you able to navigate all of the issues that were facing you? Purple, on the other hand, is all about power, disruption, and creativity. Were you in charge of those things that were coming at you? Were you the person who designated what was going to happen and where? Both of these colours together tend to suggest a lot of fun could have been had. In fact, it might even have been a very jolly year for you. But orange and purple always denote some sort of conflict that needed to be overcome. So let's now look at what colours were missing. February was where we began our readings, and here we had a baseline of colours. By March, white and orange tended to be the most common colours. And that's rather interesting, because orange was the colour that you tended to deal with the most, yet in March it was the one that you were trying to avoid. April gave us mainly white, as did May. By June, it was white and yellow as the most common colours. July was back to being white. And by August, something had changed dramatically, because now the colours that were coming to the fore were black and white. There were extremes. There were things that you were not facing that needed to be dealt with. Could you not make a decision? September and October and November and December tended to create a continuation of that trend towards feeling out of your depth. There was a need to overcome some sort of depressive, silent, withdrawn phase, but you were trying to avoid it. You weren't actually dealing with the issues that these colours represented. So what are we doing with black? Black is all about withdrawal and depression, which of course was something you wanted to avoid, but it also offers time out and meditation. Were you deliberately avoiding having to spend time inside your own head dealing with issues that had come up? Secrecy and spirituality are also denoted by the colour black. Again, what was it about these specific issues that you were avoiding or missing out on? So overall, when we look at the entire year, you faced calamity with courage, but when that became difficult, it was due to an inability to overcome some form of depressive thinking. You were thinking in bad moods rather than thinking about how this impacted upon your own spiritual and psychological growth. You weren't moving forward. You were trying to avoid thinking about reality and instead just living for the moment. Now that sounds like it could be a wonderful thing, but at the same time, it could also be very destructive if you're not paying attention to what's going around you in terms of what's going on inside your own head. So let's look at some advice as to how to cope with January 2026. The oracle cards I've chosen for this reading are the James Van Praagh The Soul's Journey, which consists of a number of meditations. And let's see what we have in store for you. But first, a color card. So I need a color card to denote the direction of travel for people born in March and what we have here is cyan on black. Black is that need to get in touch with what is going on inside of yourself. It's need for time out. In the real world, once you do get in touch with what's going on inside of yourself, you can rest and relax and feel as though life is peaceful and comfortable again. That's what the cyan on black message is all about. So let's now choose an oracle card to go with that. And what we have here is courage. And what it says here for you to use as a meditation is, I find the inner strength to face fear with confidence. When we are black internally, we are facing lots of fears. It's fears of the unknown, things that haven't happened yet, things that might never happen, but we're fearful all the same. So when you find the courage to face that, to face your own inner demons, then in the real world, things become peaceful. That's the message of the cyan and black. I think those two cards go together exceptionally well. Well, I hope you received something positive out of that annual review and have taken on board the small color reading and affirmation as a guide towards 2026. Certainly, looking at these readings from an annual perspective, a retrospective, I've come across a number of insights, both for myself, but also on behalf of those people that I know that have birthdays in the various months that I have been reading for. And one of the things that's come up here is whether or not I would even bother to continue with these. I feel hopeful that I should. I also feel as though I need to make some alterations. If you can think of suggestions that might make these more user-friendly, if you've been following the readings at all, you might even find that there's something in them that you might like to comment about. And I'd really appreciate those comments. Because right now, I'm in a dilemma, which is why I haven't actually done a full reading for every month, for every birthday month for January. It all depends on the results of this reading as to whether or not I continue. I have a lot to contemplate. My black is quite prominent too. Anyway, if you're new here and you haven't actually seen these before, you might think they're a bit confusing. That's part and parcel of a color reading. It's something that most people will never have experienced. So I wish you all the best for 2026, and hopefully we'll meet again for more color readings. If not, plenty of other things I can talk about that have to do with color. Until next time, bye.